Hello? Is it me you're looking for? Okay, we got that out of the way, so that's good. I also try to sing on the side, so that's my other passion. Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure being here today. I'm honored to stand before you. Mr. Attorney General was amazing, wasn't he? With his in this day and time, when people ask my title, I often say, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, that's me. Oh, you still have a job. Yes, very fortunate and blessed that Mohegan Sun and Mohegan Tribe stands firmly on diversity. We embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm very thankful to be a part of Mohegan Sun, and I know Foxwoods is the same as well. So we stand on our diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's important. So thank you for that. I want to briefly introduce the panel. First and foremost, thank you all for everyone here today. It's wonderful to have so many empowering men and women here today. So give yourselves a big hand. All right, I'd like to first bring up first panelist, Dr. Dale Patricia Merrill. She's the Senior Vice President of Human Resources and Administration for the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation and Foxwoods Resort Casino. She leads strategy and direction for human resources, ethics, guest experience, and Native American relations, overseeing everything from talent development and employee wellness to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Her leadership has earned Foxwoods and the Tribal Nation multiple industry and community awards. And she was honored as one of the great women in gaming by Global Gaming Women. Dr. Dale holds degrees from the University of Connecticut, Villanova University, and Vanderbilt University, and is a certified professional in human resources through the Society for Human Resource Management. Throughout her career, she has centered inclusion, mentorship, and innovation, always working to uplift and empower others. Dr. Dale. Next, I'd like to welcome Izaskun Larraneta. How did I do?
Pretty good, yeah.
She's the Executive Director of The Day Publishing Company, also known as Sassy. She grew up in the Bronx and came to The Day in 1999 to work as a talent reporter after receiving her Master of Arts in Journalism from Syracuse University. She has won numerous awards, including 2 New England Press Association Public Occurrences Awards, Latina of the Year by the Hispanic Alliance of Southeastern Connecticut, and La Latina Network, and the prestigious Yankee Quill Award for the Academy, from the Academy of New England Journalists. In 2021, Larraneta was appointed Managing Editor, becoming the first Latina to oversee the company's news operations, rising to Executive Editor in 2023. And next we have Ashton Avent, also known as Chewy. He is a dynamic entrepreneur, marketing strategist, and educator. As the founder of Main Event Group, he guides clients through brand building and promotional marketing solutions, leveraging a sharp eye for trends, analytics, and creative execution. Ashton also serves as an adjunct professor in marketing at Eastern Connecticut State University. He currently serves as the chair of the board for Norwich Public Utilities, having been a commissioner since 2021. With a passion for teaching, strategy, and mentorship, Ashton remains committed to elevating both brand performance and individual potential. His dual focus on business growth and human-centered development makes him a sought-after voice in marketing, education, and entrepreneurial communities. Ashton Avent. First question. What does belonging look like to you? Not as a policy, but as a lived experience. Who'd like to take that?
I think I'm the oldest person on this panel, so I've got a little more experience in this regard. It's not having to contort yourself to feel accepted in an environment. And I think that everyone has had that experience to some degree at some point in their lives, but when it is your baseline, when you go through life having to change the way that you present physically, the way that you speak, the way that you walk, talk, mask to get through in everyday life, it's exhausting. So when you don't have to do that, there's this sense of relief. You feel like, oh my God, this is my place. This is for me. This is my tribe. This is where I get to be authentically who I am. I don't necessarily have to mask up. I don't necessarily have to be somebody that is acceptable, because I am, by nature of being who I am, accepting. And that's really, I think, the key to what we're talking about here. That should be the theme, is what do we do to create environments where people do not have to be somebody they're not to be part of the overall mission of your organization and where you are. I feel blessed to be in that space too, because I know it's not a typical space for somebody who looks like me to be in, that I get to show up just like Dale, which is riddled with issues, but yes.
You stole some of my thunder there.
Oh, that's bad.
No, I have to agree. The only way to be is to be authentic. I'm still that girl from the Bronx who wears the big hoop earrings. I mean, when you can accept who you are, be proud of who you are, be your authentic self, that radiates, and that confidence doesn't come overnight. It takes a lived experience. But from my experience, being proud of where you come from takes you to a direction of where you know you're going to go, not having to have to be someone else. No, be proud of who you are. You know, the accent sometimes comes out, that's okay. That's who I am. And once I learned to accept that, not to be ashamed of who I was or where I came from, is when I noticed that opportunities started opening for me. Because college degrees are wonderful, but I think lived experiences and challenges and how you overcome that is what defines, for me personally, as success.
I think belonging is like, I want to take a different approach. I think we've all been to a family gathering or a holiday party where we had to bring something, and belonging feels like when you bring your dish, whatever it is, whether you can cook, whether you just stop and get napkins, paper plates, or you bring your grandma's recipe, it doesn't feel like you've been singled out. Like, oh my gosh, who brought the apple pie, and then no one touches it. Right?
Who made a potato salad?
Exactly, yes. In certain families, you just can't make the potato salad, or the macaroni and cheese, or the collard greens, but you bring what you can bring. You know, if you bring green bean casserole, then it's okay. That's a part of belonging, right? You don't feel singled out, and then how you make people feel included is you try a little bit of it, right? We teach our kids to try a little bit, even if you don't like it, at least try it. That's what I feel like belonging and inclusion is even if you might not like it, at least you try it. You can say you considered it, or it might not be to your palate, but at least you can say, hey, I tried it, or I gave it an opportunity. That's what I feel like belonging and inclusion feels like, is when you go to a holiday party and you just have a smorgasbord of different dishes, diversity, and cultures from across the world, the country, and the region. That's what I feel like.
It's beautiful. All right, awesome. So, kind of in summary, being seen, being heard, being in a safe place where you can be authentic and valued and supported, right? So, all great things. Thank you. Next question. Can you recall a defining moment that opened your eyes to the importance of equity and inclusion in your career? A defining moment.
Okay. Again, everything comes back to where I came from. So I came from a family, my father read newspapers every day. And as a treat, he would buy me the Sunday Daily News, which was a treat because it was $2 back then, and $2 back then was a lot of money for us. So that was my treat. So I would read it, you know, the comics, everything from beginning to end. And when it came to like the Metro section, right? So they would talk about the Bronx this, crime this. There was nothing good that ever came out of the newspaper. And I'm looking around and I'm saying, well, I don't know anyone who does these things. I don't know anyone who's not, you know, educated. And education comes in a lot of forms, right? And so why is this perception of people in my community like this? And then, you know, it was like my aha moment was there because that's all they're reading. That's all they're seeing. So I decided personally for my career, that how do I change that? Well, you have to be part of the solution sometimes. So, well, all the time actually, but that's how I joined and decided to become a journalist, because what we present to the world is how the world receives you. So we made some conscious decisions when I became leader not to run mugshots unless it's like a major crime, because oftentimes police departments like to serve mugshots of brown and black people, right? And that's not the image that we want to continue to feed upon, right? So those little decisions made me realize that, you know, you have to be a part of the solution. I don't know if we're going to go into this later on, but, you know, we also did some DEI training from a driver to all the way to top management. So like that we can learn how to view each other in a respectful way, acknowledge our biases, because we all have them, right? But to push through that and not let that influence your daily decision making.
My defining moment was one of the defining moments was actually a moment that broadened my lens of DEI. I think when you're born as a member of a marginalized group or underrepresented group, I think sometimes you think you just have it unlocked, right? Because this is your experience. I've always been this. And so you don't really necessarily do the work, or you just think you know what it is. And so a few years ago, this was outside of my organization, a colleague and friend of mine were talking about an experience that she had that, I mean, it was small, but it for both of us, we were like left dumbfounded. And she worked with an individual who used a wheelchair. And my understanding is that he was incredibly talented, director of talent development, and he did a lot of trainings. And so they were flying him across the country to basically sell this training that their organization had developed in-house. And he requested that the flight actually have 2 legs. And the reason for that, he needed the layover, was because he could not use the restroom on the airplane because he used a wheelchair. And when he requested it, it was denied. And because there was a policy in place around it. I don't know what the policy was. I don't know if it was the cost or the fact that you could only take 1 flight. But he had to do a lot of advocating. And it was a moment for both, for my colleague and I, where we were like, it was such a small change. The policy probably made a lot of financial sense. And the fact that they were so inflexible, eventually they did the right thing. The fact that they were so inflexible and that he had to do a lot of educating himself, right? Meaning educating the HR department, educating, you know, the head of finance as to why this is really not a policy that you want to have in place, maybe not even just for people who use wheelchairs, really broaden this lens of what it means to be an inclusive organization, or to think about how people get through life differently than you do. And quite frankly, the notion of somebody needing to take a couple of flights because they use a wheelchair never occurred to me. Never occurred to me. And I wasn't a young person at the time. I had lived a lot of life and observed a lot of things and thought to myself that I had it unlocked. But it was that broadening the lens of what it means to be inclusive and to recognize how people get through life differently, and the ways in which we don't really acknowledge that with just, things like our policies, our practices, and our thinking.
I have one of my sons here with me today. Austin, you over there? He's over there. He's always like that. It's parent-teacher conference today. They got out at 12 o'clock. There's no way how they took a break and got there and got back in time. So he travels with me everywhere. And I have another son who's on the spectrum for autism. He's nonverbal. He's 7 years old. And I realized that he uses a different form of communication than Austin does to communicate with me. He's nonverbal, so sometimes he uses his words and sometimes he uses his action or his body language and his eye movement. Or he simply just grabs my hand and says, "This is what I want." And I realized as an educator at the university level, multiple people learn in different ways. Some people are auditory, or they can hear, they learn by hearing, they learn by speaking. Some people learn by doing. And sometimes you have to give multiple examples of different ways to connect with people. And Grayson, the youngest one, has taught me that there's different ways that we can connect non-verbally. Sometimes it can just be a touch. Sometimes it can just be a look. And I realize as a leader, as a small business owner, is that people have different talents even though they might not have the right words to say, even though they might not present the way we want to. Maybe their resume is not up to where we want to. But I think that allowed me to open up to look at talent differently and to take on individuals that we might consider to have disabilities, but they have a special talent somewhere. And to recognize that special talent sometimes is the key to me, and that was the aha moment to say, hey, maybe we can look at different pools and different connections and different ways that we can be creative and come up with different things. So we have two young people who work for us. One is an intern and the other one is a part-time worker who are on the spectrum for autism that work for us. And they're extremely creative when it comes to designing. But if I had to just took the normal lens that I would normally use or what I was taught throughout the years, then I might have missed some of the gifts that they possess and the value that they bring to our organization. So I'm thankful, and that was my aha moment by looking at my own young one, but also seeing the gift in other people as well too.
Awesome. Many organizations say DEI is a core value. How do you make it a core practice? Something shared across the organization, not just led by HR.
I think it's ensuring representation in all of the spaces. We're very proud of the fact that at Mashantucket there are very few spaces that are homogenous. And that's at all levels, all departments. That's intentional. And so that's a foundation, right? Because that exposure in and of itself often brings about empathy and understanding. So that's one of the things. The other thing is having the dialogue, and I know we'll talk a little bit about this later, is creating kind of like a risk-free environment for people to have dialogues, ask questions, and that really does start with leadership. Calling things out in a respectful way when you see potential missteps, and being okay when you make a misstep and acknowledge it and say, yeah, there was bias in the way that I approached that situation. And eventually when you have more and more of those conversations in those spaces that have lots of representation, it just becomes the DNA. And I'm not saying we are there yet. I think it's constant. You have to cultivate it. It can be with the wrong leadership. All of the work that HR and others have done, it's a thread that can get pulled, and it can all be dismantled. But that's why you have to constantly be aware of it and practice it and just make it at the forefront of the dialogues that you have and not shy away from it. It shouldn't be an uncomfortable conversation. This should be something that, you know, we're excited about and that we feel like it's enriching, not something that we're trying to avoid. And I think because we come from it, that perspective of this is a good thing. It's who we are, because we are a tribe first and foremost. And so it's going to be reflected in everything that we do and everything that we say.
I know when a reporter comes and pitches a story or is writing a story, one of my first questions is to ask, who did you speak to? Is it the same voices? Can we bring in some different perspectives? Because sometimes it's easier to just call the same person, right? But there are a lot of people, experts, if you will, who look like us, right? And so let's introduce those voices. I also make a concerted effort. So when this happened a couple months ago, when a reporter interviewed a young black woman, and she didn't mean any harm by it, so I knew where she was coming from, but she said, oh, she was so well spoken. Well, why wouldn't she, right? Why wouldn't this young woman be well spoken? She goes, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I know she didn't, but language matters, right? So I think she'll never do that again.
And what does well spoken mean?
And what does
That's the other.
and what does that mean, right? Exactly. So that there's a lot of loaded language there. Subconscious bias, right? Unconscious bias. So when we write, well, at least I try to enforce, when we write, make sure you're not putting your biases in there. Make sure it's fair. Make sure you're including voices that we don't normally hear. And, that's, it has to start somewhere. Because, again, what we produce is consumed publicly.
You guys have some really great perspectives. What's the question again, Derrick? I'm listening to you guys. Jeez.
I don't know, I'm lost too.
Just putting myself in their shoes, that's a difficult job.
Yeah, so many organizations say DEI is a core value. How do you make it a core practice? Something shared across the organization, not just led by HR.
I think it's more than just a program. I think it's more than just celebrating a holiday. I think it's really the makeup of your organization. Like if you took a box of crayons, I'm sorry, I teach sometimes, so I try to provide a little analogy for you. If you took the same crayons and you colored the picture, they will all look the same, right? So if you had all black crayons, then the picture will be all black at times. But it's sometimes when you add those different sprinkles of accents of colors that you get a different shade, or you might get a different 3D effect. And I think that's what the diversity is at times in an organization, is to add those different things to what your core values are already. And I think identifying what your core values are and making sure that everyone understands them as an organization is a start, right? A lot of us are a part of an organization, but the culture has been the same for so long, and we don't want to disrupt the culture. But sometimes I think getting back to the foundation helps build the culture. And I think by adding those different shades and those different pieces allow for different organizations to come together and embrace the diversity, as opposed to just keeping things the same old same. Because at the end of the day, we use the analogy, if you continue to do the same thing over and over again, what is that called? So if we continue to have the same foundation with the same culture, then we're all practicing insanity at some point. And I think we need to start with ourselves. I think it starts with yourself and loving yourself, right? Because if you love yourself, then you can lead with love, and you can project love within your organization. And I think those are one of the things that help us with diversity and help us with the core values of the organization, if that makes sense.
Real deep.
Yeah. It's a touching subject. This is our livelihoods. This is not something that we just practice from day to day. This is our livelihood. Your organization is your livelihood. This is how you feed your family. This is why we're all in the room here, is because we're part of some organization. So it's something that we live, breathe, eat, sleep. You know, if you ask Tony, does he live by the chamber? Absolutely. He probably gives more time to the chamber than he does himself. And that's part of who he is and what he does. So yes, sometimes it does get a little deep because we give our lives to everything that we do and we give 100% effort. So yes.
Awesome. So representation is powerful, but it's only the first step. What needs to happen after someone gets a seat at the table?
It's going to sound cliche, but it's being at the table and having a voice at the table are two very different things. So if you're sitting at the table and you're not able to there's no influence or you're not giving a voice, then it really just is a check the box. We've got Dale as the head of HR, so that's a nice box we're checking. But if Dale is unable to influence the way that the organization is run, then it really is pointless. So the next step is really truly giving influence and power to those people that are at the table. And because I'm talking about coming from a perspective in which we're not ashamed and we recognize the mistakes we made, you know, we actually made one not too long ago where we have a woman that is in finance, and we were rolling out a new initiative that was a finance-based initiative. And when we rolled out that initiative, the initiative was, we sent out a memo, all hands, and the memo was co-authored by 3 men. And the woman who really is largely responsible for it was not included in the memo. It was a misstep. It was not a good misstep because what is that saying to our team members? It's saying that, oh, she's got a seat at the table, but she's not really doing the work, which we all know is not the truth. But so those are the things that, oh, and I have to say, when it was called out, first of all, I felt empowered to call it out. So there was no like fear on my part. So that tells you I have some influence, right? When it was called out, it was corrected. So that's the other piece of it. So yes, there was a misstep. Yes, I believe we handled it the right way. But these are the types of signals that can undermine your efforts to make people believe in EDI or you know, inclusion when they feel like this is just you know, just a picture on the executive page, but they're not really doing the work.
Thank you.
Yes, along those lines too, I mean, when you're in a leadership position, you want to bring others with you. So I think we have a responsibility is, you know, as a Latina, how can we bring those voices in? Like, how can we bring more diversity? Because now I'm in a position to hire, right? I wasn't before. I'm going to hire the best candidate, but I'm also going to give a candidate who maybe on paper doesn't look like the right fit, but let's give them a chance. Let's bring them in. Let's interview them. Let's see what they have to offer. Because what you represent on paper is not what you can give. I mean, if we're going to be honest, based on my SAT scores, I'm brain dead, right? I mean, but, you know, someone, you know, we had affirmative action then, you know, I always say affirmative action may have gotten me in the door, it didn't keep me there, right? So I had to prove myself, and, you know, affirmative action didn't get me on the dean's list. My hard work did, but someone gave me a chance. So that's what I like to do is give people a chance, you know. Again, as someone, I'm going to, you know, do a little sidebar here. You know, my name is Izaskun Larraneta. I can't tell you how many times people didn't return my phone call or even look at my paper, at my resume, because I had an ethnic sounding name. It happens, folks, and it still happens. So just be aware of that, you know. Don't let someone's name deter you from hiring someone who's potentially an excellent candidate and a future leader in your organization.
I think there's a quote that says, when you get a seat at the table, you don't put up a wall, you build a bigger table. Mm-hmm. And I think that the table should be representative of people who might be smarter, faster, stronger, bigger than you. Because I think the more talent that you have at the table, the better you become. And I think as a leader, you have to find a way to manage that. But I think embracing people's different perspectives at times allows everyone to become sharper because iron sharpens iron. And sometimes our fear gets in the way and it blocks us from sometimes extending out those opportunities at the table because of our own fear or our own insecurity. And sometimes we have to let that go. And you have to trust your talent, and you have to trust the people at the table that they're going to make the right decisions with the proper coaching, the proper cultivation, and the proper guidelines. Also allow for you to retain talent, you know, and to look in different talent pools in different ways, because there are talented people and they might not come shiny, wrapped up in a bow with a 4.0 GPA, or they might not be on Dean's list or honor roll. I was never none of that in school. I went to school in Hartford, probably had a C+ average, and I squeaked my way into Eastern to college. And now here I am teaching at the same university I squeaked my way into. So with that, I wouldn't be the shiny person that went to the Ivy League school. I'm in school now, getting my doctorates at Southern. Squeak my way in there somehow, some way. Still not on the dean's list. But that doesn't mean that you don't bring anything to the table. And I think embracing those people who might not be your normal candidate, giving them an opportunity to be at the table, I think is a representation of what we talk about here today.
I remember marching in the drum and bugle corps back in the day. Anyone familiar with drum and bugle corps? That's why I brought you with me today. I want to make sure at least two people knew. But I auditioned for one of the world champion drum and bugle corps. They were two-time world champions. I played bugle, baritone horn, and when I went to the corps, they had already won 2 years in a row. So I just wanted to be in the room, have the opportunity to show my skill set to see if I could be a part of the team. So the great thing is they gave us all an opportunity. We were all exposed. There were 200 people auditioning for 70 spots, and so they'd call you out. They called me out and said, "Here, play this exercise," and fortunately, I did well on it. So when I first got in there, there's different sections based on your skill set. I didn't know where I ranked, so I just sat down in the lower section, because again, these are two-time world champions, so I don't know where I rank. So bottom line is, when they gave me the opportunity to come out front and show what I could do, well, people from the high section, the higher skilled players, they were whispering at each other, and they started pointing at me, and they came over to me and said, "Hi, we're Bill and such, and why are you sitting down here?" I said, "Well, I'm just trying to make the team." "Yeah, come on up here with the first section. That's where you belong." So I had the opportunity. I was at the table, but I was actually able to share what I was able to do, and from there, I was able to get a seat at the top of the table, if you will. So, and we did win another championship too. So. All right. So how do you respond when data or feedback reveals inequity in your workplace?
I read this book by the guy who owns Netflix. I don't remember his name. It's called No Rules Rules. And he has a feedback system in which is open feedback, in which anybody from the bottom to the top can give feedback to any one of the leaders. But one of the things is that they get rid of the bottom 10% of the workforce every year. So you're only dealing with top performers, so iron actually sharpens iron. But he has this feedback dinner, and a lot of us have been taught when we give feedback, you start with something soft at the top, opportunities are critical in the middle, then you always end with something positive. So his analogy is that 33% of our conversations are all full of fluff. Right? So I took that approach when it comes to feedback, is that the feedback has to be done with love, done with candor, but as long as it's done to build somebody up and not tear them down. And I think if you can lead with the love, you can lead with the truth though. There's a difference when you lead with truth and love. It helps build people up. But if you just want to be a truth with no love, that means essentially you're just being a a jerk in a way, right? And I think that approach to me, giving feedback, has changed the way that I give feedback to the students, that I give feedback to other individuals as well, is because I'm leading with love and I'm leading with the opportunity to build you up and not tear you down, but at the same time giving you the critical feedback, even though it might be tough, at least you can process it a different way, and it's not done to tear you down. And I felt like that was a moment for me and changed me in the way I give feedback to others.
My leadership style is I view myself as a servant leader. I'm here to serve my staff. And what that means to me is to always listen. I may not like it, but I'm listening. We have weekly meetings and we talk about what we're going to work on, our challenges, what we struggle with. We get a lot of feedback in the comment sections, and how we deal with those is, it's a challenging time right now, the news business right now. But I think any good leader has to learn that you don't know it all, and don't fake it. They know when you don't know what you're doing, and it's okay to acknowledge you don't know what you're doing at the time. But they know they can reach me literally from when I start to when I go to bed. Right before then, they can reach me. And I think that availability builds that trust. So they're not afraid to come to me and say, this made me feel uncomfortable, or I feel this pressure. I also like to prioritize their mental health too. I think that sometimes in this industry too, it gets a little intense, for lack of a better word. So you just have to be there for them. And criticism, as long as it's done respectfully and constructively, it's okay. And they have to be able to receive that as well. So you have to be able to receive it so they can be able to receive it too.
I'll take the data leg of that question. First, just make sure that the data is actually revealing inequity and that it's just not on the face of it. Because when you're eager to correct wrongs, there are going to be times when you see, oh, this hiring manager seems to only be hiring other men. And so you're saying immediately there's a problem. So first, just make sure that that's the story that the data is telling, because correlation's not causation. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's happening. And when you know that that's what's happening, you just fix it, right? If you find that there's this one department head that is only hiring people that are part of their group, and I'm gonna pick on the men for a minute, and it happens to be men, take a look at things like how you're recruiting, how many women did you present to that hiring manager, and if it still ends up that, he's looking to hire only men, then it's just time to have a conversation. It's time to point it out to him, because quite frankly, he may not even realize that's what he's doing. And I'm exposing all of, our missteps, and I do that because I want to normalize that sometimes people get it wrong, and I don't think it's fair to anybody to pretend that any one organization's got it on lock. But more recently, we were doing a review of interview questions. And as I was looking at these interview questions, one of them, and it was definitely an area where, for the most part, it's a job that is often held by men. And the question started, what do you do when one of your men, blah, blah, blah? And so I just got mad. Because I was like, are you serious? Like, wow, I like to think I have encouraged everybody to do better, and we all got it right. So after I got a little irritated, I sent it back, and I said, question 3 is problematic, and I want you to just think about it for a second and then give me a call. And the individual did, and I said, I already know that you weren't thinking, and you absolutely weren't meaning to send a message, but you have to know. You can't say one of my men. And so I think I've lost track of the data question, but anyway, so just make sure, as I tend to do, just first make sure that that's the story it's telling, and then fix it.
Okay, we can take time for a couple of quick questions. Is that all right? All right, maybe one or two questions. Any hot questions out there?
So it's a question for all three of you. Have you ever been able to convince somebody who doesn't see the value of diversity, equity, and inclusion for its value? And if so, how did you do that?
You knew it.
It's tough because of the environment that I grew my career in, which is with the tribe. I don't know if I earnestly convinced them, right? So I don't know if, I did come across it. I don't know if in their heart they really believed it, or if I actually made them change the way that they live their personal life or check biases and all of that. But because it was an imperative from the tribal council, which is, for all intents and purposes, the board, I really just did appeal to the fact that it was something that needed to happen for his longevity. So if he wanted to continue to thrive with the tribe, then he was going to at least have to, and I didn't use the word pretend. I'm hoping just by nature of being exposed to all of us that eventually he got there. So I don't know if I convinced somebody to really genuinely believe it, but I convinced somebody who didn't to champion it in some ways. And it was by appealing to the fact that you work for a board that says this is the way that things need to be. Now, if you have to convince a board, that's heavy lifting, and I'm not sure that you're really in the right space, right? I find a way to mention this in almost every conversation. I'm a vegan. I'm sorry. One of my sons asked me a few years ago, he read an article about, I believe it was a woman who's working for a tobacco company, and she sued for something, and I think it was because she was exposed, and I could be getting the story wrong, so don't bother looking, but she was exposed in some ways to things and blah, blah, blah. And I said to him, and he asked me, what did you think about that? And I said, well, I'm a vegan, and I would not go work for Oscar Mayer and then complain that I felt like their meat eating was problematic. And so if you have to do the lifting to the extent that you're the board or the people at the very top level don't believe it, you're probably in the wrong space. That is too heavy of a lift for us. And so that's my opinion. And so if you're starting from the top needing to be moved and it seems hard, I would look for a different place.
Well, just several years ago, we got a very generous grant from the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut that gave us the opportunity to offer DEI training, 6 sessions, 6 months, from the company, from the driver, the delivery drivers, all the way to the top. And in the beginning, we got a lot of resistance. Well, why do I have to do this? I don't have biases. I don't have stereotypes. I don't do this. I don't do that. I'm not racist. I'm not this. I'm not that. But when they started undergoing these sessions, they kind of started realizing, maybe I do have a little bit of unconscious bias. Maybe I do stereotype certain people. I think by at least acknowledging that they have some of these things, maybe they just kept it and still continue that way. I can't change how you feel, but I'm certainly going to expose you to these circumstances. And I think it was really beneficial for the company. It was team building, and the program also was required for new hires, that this company will not stand for anything that doesn't, embrace DEI, doesn't embrace everyone. So, anyone else?
All right, no, we're good.
One more question, that's it?
Bring on back here.
You're good. You know you're good back then.
Bring on back here, Bob. To bring it full circle, looking back through all of your experiences, things that you've learned, grown in, what would be one piece of advice that you would give your younger self with regards to DE&I, expanding your grown keeping your toolbox sharp, but also, looking back on the experiences that you've encountered personally?
5 seconds to think about it. Coming.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's it.
All right.
It's here. Look, I'm moving right into it.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're trying to do, put me on the spot. I think when it comes to your younger self, there's an analogy in the clothing line that I developed at our store. It's called Fox and Owl. And the fox is very clever, very witty, and always stays 10 steps ahead. And then as the owl, they have a different perspective in life. They sit up higher, they're very calculated, but they're full of wisdom. And I think my younger self would say, be like the fox, but don't be afraid to take risks. Don't let your fears get in the way, and don't be afraid to use your words to express yourself. And in my wisdom now, as an owl, as they would say, I think still use your words, still don't be afraid, but don't let your fears hold you back. And I think fear is the most crippling thing that we can have sometimes to help us move forward. So I would say, be like the fox when I was younger, but still be like the owl. So the slogan is stay clever, stay wise, but don't let fear get in the way.
I guess what I would tell myself is, girl, you belong. That's all. You belong.
For me, it would be really living out what I was telling other people to do. So in one breath, I would tell people, definitely show up as who you are, be authentic, and then I would be code switching. I would tell people, definitely rock your natural hair, and then I was straight, and I still do. So if you see me with straight hair, don't think anything of it. But so it was, I was encouraging people. And the way that I was actually living out was not, I wasn't giving myself that same grace. So ultimately, I would say, give yourself the same compassion, grace that you're trying to afford to everybody else. Beautiful.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be the part of this very special event today. One more thing with you. My name is Derrick. D-E-R-I-C. Think about that. One more thing, okay. This is not planned here. On the spot here. He asked if I could sing a song, so I'm going to share with you a little diversity, the Black National Anthem. How's that? I want you to listen to the words. If you don't know it, that's okay. Listen to the words, because the words don't apply just to black folks. They apply to everyone. One more breath. Can we all rise, please, if you're able to? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing arise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing a rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
to a wonderful program. I want to thank our panelists and Dale, Sassy, and Ashton. What a great job they've done. And I also want to thank our sponsors. I think Sassy was the person that brought up one point that I want to just remind everybody. Listen. It's amazing what you learn about others if you listen. And not only that, but it creates relationship, really builds a process. But this is very, very important. Lovely folks, thank you very much for being here today. And thank you to our panelists and Derrick for a great job. Have a great day.